All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Racha Kodash.
All right.
Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is History and the Bible. And earlier, I was listening, or actually watching, this documentary on the Persian Empire. And, you know, a lot of things that we know, but, a few little nuggets here and there that they were throwing out that, uh, made me kind of look into it a little bit. I didn't do full in-depth look into it, but, just found it interesting. And our Lord's will touch up on it. But, it just prompted me through the Spirit to tap into the history of these scriptures, because the history of these scriptures in prophecy, dealing with the prophecy part, is set up as a guideline to let us know where we're at in prophecy today. And we're in the last leg of the ancient Roman Empire, today being the modern day Roman Empire called America. And there's a great amalgamation, you could look that word up, of different cultures, religions, military defenses, strategies, financial, financial things that they took from these different cultures, legislation, so on and so forth, all together meshed as one here in America, being the final empire. Now, the scriptures call America Babylon the Great. You're not going to see, you're going to open up the book of Revelation and say, Babylon the Great is America. You're not going to find that. That doesn't exist, because the term America did not exist back then. America is actually didn't really exist until they, labeled the Americas after Amerigo Vespucci. So the name Amerigo existed, but the name America did not. It was pretty much a feminized way of saying Amerigo. So you're not going to find that. You're not going to find certain modern terminologies, in the scriptures to describe the things that we're speaking about today, because these modern terms didn't exist back then. And this is where people get caught up, because they're expecting the scriptures to say, X, Y, Z, and it's not going to say it like that. Like, I was watching a video a little while ago, Elder Pastor are still premiering, on this Jake chick that wants the scriptures. She wants us to show her in the scriptures, which we ain't gonna show you shit, where Levi are the Haitians, where it says it just like that. The Seminole Indians are so and so on, and we ain't gonna show you shit. One scripture I would have went to, okay, I'm gonna show you. Give me Amos 3:7. Surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealed the secrets unto his servants, the prophets. That's all you're gonna get. That's all you're gonna get. All right. So let's just go, because like I said, it was dealing with the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire, right, as we know, brothers that have been studying and have been, doing their due diligence for a while, know that this vision in the book of Daniel of the four beasts are world empires that would come and go. And at the end of the fourth empire, the government of Yahushua would be established. Now, any scholar that's worth his weight in salt knows that those four beasts, the Medeo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire. And obviously, through history, ancient history, we know that the Fourth Empire, which is the ancient Roman Empire, came and went. So after that empire would fall, then Yahweh empire, his kingdom would be established. So why are we not in the kingdom yet? And the reason why is because when you read through there with a spiritual eye, you see that there were clues in there that America or another empire would rise up from that fourth empire. And it gives us other clues in the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter, and others, Revelation 13, so on and so forth. All right. So we're going to go into this and show you what these are, break some of it down. I'm not going to go through the whole chapter unless the Spirit wants me to, but I'm going to make some points, brief points here and there, and Lord's will, it'll be an edifying lesson. So we're going to just go straight to Daniel 7:3. It says, matter of fact, I started 2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. This great sea is the Mediterranean Sea. All right. Let's just look up this word vision real quick so you can get an idea. Because you have dreams and you have visions. The word for vision is chasawa. Chasawa, vision appearance, right? Because what we're witnessing right now with our not natural eyes, so to speak, the prophet saw in another dimension. Okay. And then it comes from the word chasa, which means to see. Okay. So these 4 beasts, as I explained to you what they were, right? They were established, set up, and they came into power, and then they fell out of power. One empire rose, the next empire started to become prominent militarily, financially, started to be rival, and eventually was the one that dominated the previous kingdom, and the riches, wealth, and some of the practices were amalgamated or translated into the next empire, all the way until what you see today, America. Okay, it says, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now, how do we know that that this is not talking about actual beasts? Well, you will have to jump down to the 17th verse, and the 17th verse breaks it down. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now, kings represents rulership. All right, so it would be 4 empires that will raise up out of the earth. Okay, so you could understand. Now, verse 4, the first was like a lion. Now, the lion represents the Assyrian Empire, because the Assyrian Empire was a prominent empire going way back. You're talking about Sumer, to the cradle of civilization, as they call it, back in the plains of Shinar, Mesopotamia, Babylon, so on and so forth. And the Assyrian Empire, they were an empire from 911 BC to 609 BC. So what happened in 609 BC is that pretty much they became the Neo-Babylonian Empire, so you could understand. All right, because the Neo-Babylonian Empire, unlike the ancient Babylonian Empire, was ruled by Assyrians. Okay, so it says the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Now, the eagle's wings is a representation of an image that is attributed to the Assyrian Empire, which is known as the griffin. Now, you have a griffin, if you type in Assyrian griffin, matter of fact, let me try to see if we could do that real quick. Let's see what comes up. And we've actually seen these in there you go. And then there's some that have the head of a man, the head of of the Assyrians, and has the wings on it. And this is the first beast, which is a two-part beast. Let me just type in Griffin, see what comes up if you just type in Griffin. Enter. All right, they're not going to give it to you. Just going to give you some bullshit. See, back in the days, you would type certain things in and boom, it would just pop right up. All right, let's go back. Ancient Assyrian gods. Let's see what this says. Here we go. This is an Assyrian griffin. As you can see, it has the wings. It looks like an animal, but this was a representation of the Assyrian Empire. All right. So it says, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth. And when were the wings thereof plucked? During the time of the Babylonian Empire. And the Babylonian Empire, or the Neo-Babylonian Empire, when you go back to ancient Babylon, the ancient Babylonian Empire was ruled from 1894 BC to roughly about 1595 BC. But then you had the Neo-Babylonian Empire that was ruled by the Assyrians, that ruled from 629 BC to about 539 BC. And what they did was that the name of that empire absorbed the Assyrian Empire into it. So it became the Neo-Babylonian Empire. All right. It says, and may stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And this is a representation of Nebuchadnezzar. That was he was a great ruler. The Babylonian Empire back then was considered the most prestigious, the most, grandiose, so to speak, empire that was around. And that's why when you read Daniel, the second chapter, it describes the statue with the head of gold. And the head of gold was the most precious metal. And then the metals, as you went down from the head to the shoulders on down, the metals started to become inferior. It went from gold to silver to bronze to iron. And these were representations of different empires that will come up that would not have the splendor of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, but they would be stronger militarily. All right. Now, just as a side note to this, the Medes, right, which were a dominant power, right? Because matter of fact, before we even deal with that, let's go into the next verse. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. And this second to a bear, this represents the Medeo-Persian Empire. Because it was the Medes that were ruling. They were an empire. And the Persians were tributary to them. Even Cyrus, before he became Cyrus the great Persian ruler, he was tributary to the Medes. Right? It says, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So when it says it raised up on one side, because you had 2 empires that ruled together, one came up first, which was the Medes, and then the Persians, that ruled later, they became greater. And when you go to the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter, right, it shows that here. And let's see, in the verse 3, I'll start at 2. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And that's one thing they mentioned in that documentary, that the Persians, that land mass was called Elam. All right. And those are the Elamites, the ancient Elamites, which are so-called East Indians. I don't care if they call them Pakistanis or whatever. They're all Elamites. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram. So what is this ram? He saw a ram in the vision, but what did the ram represent? Let's jump down to the 20th verse. It says, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. See, because the Medes came first, then the Persians became greater. That's why I said two horns. Horns are a representation of power. So when you go back up, it says, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had two horns, and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. See, so you had the Medes that were a great power. They were taken down. They were causing havoc and ruckus. Now, it was a lot of wars that they were fighting. They were a force to be reckoned with, as they say. But then the Persians, who were tributary to them, overtook them. All right. And then it says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. That's in three different directions. It says, so that no beast might stand before him, meaning the other beasts, the other empires, and neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. All right. So remember, it said westward, northward, and southward. So when we read back here in Daniel 7:5, and behold, another beast, the second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, because the Persians became greater, although the Medes came first, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. That represents the three directions that they conquered. They conquered Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. All right, those are the three major empires, empires that they conquered. It says, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Now, the thing is that the Persians were in subjection to the Medes, and Cyrus, which became the head leader of the Persian Empire, he was tributary to the Medes, but he rebelled from underneath the Medes around 553 BC. Okay. So the Median Empire ruled from 678 BC to roughly about 549 BC. And the Persian Empire ruled from 550 BC to about 330 BC. And the reason why, because the Medes around this time, when the Persian Empire became great, they were absorbed into the Persian Empire. That's why they call it the Medeo-Persian Empire. And by 330 BC, this is when Alexander, the Greek, and the Greek Empire conquered the Medeo-Persian Empire. All right, because it was the time of the Greeks, the times of Esau to rule, and there was nothing that these empires could do to stop them. And it was considered madness to fight and create wars against the Persians. But what they didn't understand is they see one thing men overlook is prophecy. The scriptures say none has resisted the Most High's will. So there's nothing that anyone could do once the Lord establishes, prophecy. A set time is set, a set rule is set, and once that time is up, you out of there. And there's always that emerging empire in the distance that poses a threat. And this emergent empire in the distance today that poses a threat is Yahweh's kingdom to Esau's kingdom, which is America. Right. So now, consequently, to use one of Jordan Maxwell's favorite words, when America was established, they borrowed from different empires, right? They borrowed from the ancient Romans, they borrowed from the Greeks, But Thomas Jefferson, which was one of the so-called founding forefathers, he got a lot of influence from Cyrus the Great, the Persian king. And they had something called the Cyropedia, which was an encyclopedia based off of Cyrus and his exploits and everything. I'm not an expert at that. I will have to look into it a little bit more. But it was basically just, the way and the things that he did in his rule. And that part of that was used to influence the American government. And you have to keep that in mind. Babylon and Assyria and the Medeo-Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, all right? And going to Egypt, ancient Egyptians, Sumer, the Canaanite, all of those different empires, they had an influence in America being established. So what I did was, because when he mentioned that, I said, did Thomas Jefferson borrow from the Persian Empire? Yes, Thomas Jefferson drew influence from the Persian Empire, particularly from the ideals of religious tolerance and just statesmanship exemplified by Cyrus the Great. See, this was primarily through reading the Cyropedia, a historical novel about Cyrus written by the ancient Greek historian Xenophon, and not from direct interaction with the empire itself. Key ways Jefferson was inspired by Cyrus the Great and the Persian model, a model of religious tolerance. The Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great was notable for its policy of allowing diverse cultures and religions to coexist rather than imposing a single state religion, just like in America, freedom of religion. So they drew the freedom of religion off of that. It says, during the Enlightenment, this model served as a reference for the American founding fathers, including Jefferson, in crafting a new form of government based on religious tolerance. Enlightenment leadership. The Cyropedia portrays Cyrus as an ideal and enlightened ruler who governed with wisdom and justice. Jefferson and other American founders studied this work as an example of virtuous statesmanship. Jefferson himself owned at least 2 copies of the Cyropedia and recommended the book to his grandson. It says influence on the U.S. Constitution. The model of a state that respects diversity and has no single dominant religion, as described in texts about Cyrus, was a significant influence on the political thought of the era. The founding fathers, including Jefferson, studied this historical example as they drafted the U.S. Constitution. So the U.S. Constitution, in part, well, really, a big portion of it was influenced by Cyrus the Great in the Cyropedia and the way that he ruled his government. Okay? Then the next one is a system of governance. The Persian system of central authority that oversaw many autonomous states with their own laws, like in America, was noted by German philosopher Hegel in the 1830s. His description of the empire's respect for the individual cultures and laws of conquered peoples was compared to the structure intended by the U.S. Constitution. Notice it said intended, but it was really only intended for Esau, not for Gad, not for Judah, not for none of the other tribes, not for anybody else except for the Edomites. All right, so the next question that I asked was, because when you go and you research, America has been influenced by many different cultures, right? So I went to the chat. I said the first question I asked chat was, is America a hybrid empire? Now, if you don't know what hybrid is two. It's a combination of two. All right, submutation, 2 or more. So it says, yes, the United States can be considered a hybrid empire, though this depends on how you define empire and what dimensions you focus on: military, economic, cultural, or political. What is a hybrid empire? A hybrid empire blends multiple forms of influence and control rather than relying solely on traditional colonial conquests. See, it may use hard power, military force, coercion, America does, soft power, culture, diplomacy, media, education, right? To speak as 2 horns as a dragon, two horns like a lamb. Economic dominance. American dollar is a war reserve currency through multinational corporations, trade policies, and financial institutions. Institutional influence, control of global institutions like the IMF, World Bank, UN, etc. And America fits all of this, because what this made me think of, right, was pretty much about why America is called Babylon the Great. So that was a question I just posed just to see what they said. I said, what is meant by the phrase Babylon the Great? And when you look at the word Babylon, it goes back to the word Babal, which means confusion. So the greatest conglomeration of confusion. So what would be more confusing than having all of these different empires and their religions and their cultures and their laws, all amalgamated into one? Those different empires were destroyed for all of the practices that they had, right? So why would America, if it's supposed to be established upon Judeo-Christian principles, why would they borrow from all these different empires to establish, such a such a demonic, for lack of better words, system? So it says Babylon the Great is a symbolic entity in the book of Revelation that represents the world system of false religion, worldly power, and opposition to the Most High, rather than a single literal city or nation, because it's causing the whole world to partake of the debaucherous lifestyle and the heinous lifestyle of America, rooted in the ancient city of Babylon and the Tower of Babel from Genesis. This symbolic mother of harlots embodies all corrupt, anti-God forces throughout history. See? So mother of harlots embodies all corrupt. I didn't even know this was in here. Anti-God forces throughout history. So America has taken from every culture, every religion, every law, every government, every financial, every financial thing that was set up by these empires and just amalgamated into one. That's why it's known as Babylon the Great. It says particularly those that oppress and persecute believers. And we see that. It is distinguished from political and commercial powers, though connected to them, because it's all one, it's all connected together, it's all one, and is ultimately destined for divine destruction. So we go to the chat, right? So it says, in what ways is the U.S. a hybrid empire? Military reach, had power. The U.S. has 800 plus military bases in over 70 countries. It maintains global military supremacy, enabling it to protect force anywhere quickly. And this is why they have these different, bases everywhere on the planet. Okay? Because they want to have forces in place so where if anything breaks out anywhere in the world, they have, they have supplies and the military men to deal with whatever situation is coming. It has led or participated in numerous interventions and regime change, example given, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. So it says economic dominance. This is at number 2. The US dollar is the world reserve currency. US corporations like Apple, Amazon, and Google dominate global markets. Americanization, look that up. Though through institutions like the IMF and World Bank, the US, because if this is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, how is the US pretty much in control of all of that? Right? The US helps shape economic policies in the global South. Cultural power, soft power. Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and American universities spread American values and norms globally. Right? That's why it says that Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. that made all the earth drunken. It says English, largely due to American influence, is the global lingua franca, which is the common language. Elder Pastor brings out all the time that if you want to get into aviation, doesn't matter what country you're from, you have to speak English. You can't be a pilot and speak Japanese or Chinese or whatever the case may be. You have to know how to speak English. Now, you can speak other languages, that's fine. But in order to fly the so-called friendly skies or the demonic skies of Esau, you have to speak the English language, which is the lingua franca of the planet. You see? That's why when you have these heathens, Elam and others, Moab, Ammon and all them, Ishmael and all them that come here to the Americas or whatever the case may be, they make sure that they learn English, learn how to enunciate the words properly, and their children are taught and groomed to speak the English language perfectly, but not just the English language, the Edomite style of the English language. Like the shit that you see like on CNN, and when you see Jake or you see the other nations speaking, and there's and if you close your eyes, you would think you're listening to an Edomite, right? It says brands, media, music, and entertainment reinforce American culture dominance. So America has that dominance over the world, right? As a hybrid empire. Institutional control, the U.S. holds major influence in international organizations, example given veto power in the UN Security Council, leadership in NATO. So NATO is supposed to be all these different so-called European countries that come together to hash out, problems, situations, policies, whatever it is. But yet America has the last say-so. Because there was a time when there were certain so-called European countries that wanted certain other countries to get into, I believe that was NATO, or was that the EU? Either or, it was one or the other. And America said no, and guess what? They didn't get in there, because America is this great global empire that would rule in the last days, which would be the revival of the ancient Roman Empire. Promotes and exports liberal democratic values and capitalist frameworks. Yeah, and you see that. And that's why Meyer Amschel Bauer said, give me control of the nation's money, and I care now who writes his laws. Because if you control the printing of the money and the control of the money, you control everything else. Why call it hybrid? Unlike traditional empires like the British or Roman empires, the U.S. often avoids direct territorial control. Instead, it maintains informal hegemony, right? And then also it fights proxy wars, I think it's called, proxy wars. Exercises economic and ideological control. Yeah, because all the nations are drunken of the cup, therefore the nations are mad. Relies on alliances and proxies rather than outright colonies. So this is just like a borrowing of all these different nations. Nations were known, or empires were known for rising up and conquering other nations and subjecting them to themselves. America has taken every policy of all these different nations and used it in a big hodgepodge, for America. It says counterpoints. Some argue the U.S. is not an empire because it doesn't rule colonies in the traditional sense. It don't matter. It's still an empire. It has global influence. It has military might. The U.S. dollar is used as a world reserve currency. How much proof do you need? Many of the relationships are voluntary alliances like NATO or trade agreements. Yeah, but if you don't get in bed, you don't eat. It supports self-determination and democracy, at least in rhetoric. Right. See, at least the chat picked that up. Yeah, you can support, you can support your own democracy or whatever, but that's just rhetoric. It ain't really real. It's just a talking point. It says, however, critics point to asymmetrical power dynamics in those relationships, military occupation, and regime changes For what? To put in puppets that will push American values that are really indirectly small hat values. Economic dependencies created through debt and trade. And that's why they understand the power of debt. They understand the power of and control of money, and they understand the power of debt and trade. And if you could corner those markets, you pretty much got everything else in the bag. It's in the bag. Conclusion. So yes, America can be considered a hybrid empire, not in the old colonial mode, but as a state that exerts multi-dimensional global dominance through a combination of military, economic, cultural, and institutional means. Its empires we define for the modern era. And pretty much they also borrow from all of these different empires and just put it all into one. So my next question was America influenced by different empires? Yes, America was deeply influenced by various historical empires, both in its formation and in how it evolved as a global power. These influences shaped its political structure, expansionist mindset, legal systems, military strategies, and even its cultural identity. So I just want to get real quick Revelation 17. We're going straight to the point. Because for a long time, this was a mystery. Who this harlot was, who Babylon the Great was. But there's no longer a mystery. No, the seals have been broken on this mystery. So it says Revelation 17:5, and upon her forehead was a name written, mystery. So it was a mystery. Matter of fact, let's look up the word mystery. And the mystery is just that. It's not meant for everybody to get. If something is a mystery, that means that there's someone that knows the secret. And only those that have access to the secret can understand what the mystery means. But to the others, it's going to be spoken in parables, riddles. So it says mysterion, hidden thing, secret mystery. Generally, mysteries, religious secrets confined only to the initiated and not to ordinary mortals. Yeah. Only the elect are going to get these mysteries. And the prophets are going to be the first in line for that. A hidden or secret thing, not obvious to the understanding. See? And that's why people read the scriptures and don't understand it. To this day, there have not been any Edomite scholars, any deep classes in these colleges on how to break down the book of Revelation. They don't have it. They ain't got it. They ain't gonna get it. Now you have some that are waking up because the prophets have been out here, going all the way back to Elder Albert Bivens. Prior to that, people wasn't really, you had, some Edomites that got into the scriptures that speak about certain things that were prophetic. But as far as the book of Revelation, you didn't really have much of anything of anybody breaking it down. It wasn't until the Elder Albert Bivens going into, King Mashah, High Priest Ariah, High Priest Yaquab, and the rest, of the seven, and so on and down the line, that these mysteries started to be open. And these devils, you got to understand, one thing about these devils is they do their due diligence. They watch, they observe, they study. They look at things. They leave no stone unturned. So you best better believe that they were watching the prophets, and deciphering it. Yeah, they're right, but their mindset is that their empire is going to continue forever, because they got to them, it's impossible for them to lose this power, because they have such global influence on the planet that they never would think that they would ever lose it. And that's just not the case, because every empire that has ever come up is all going to fall except for Yahushai's kingdom. That's why Yahushai said in the matter of fact, let me get that real quick and we'll come right back to this. Luke, because you could look at Luke 21 and verse 24 as pretty much the answer to or fulfillment of Daniel, the 7th chapter. Luke 21:24. And they, the Israelites, shall fall by the edge of the sword, 70 AD, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, the nations, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So when we have the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled, it's talking about the time when all of these different heathen empires are brought down. The final heathen empire to be brought down is the Edomite Empire. That's why in the book of 2nd Ezra, for those of you that don't know or that may not be familiar with it, 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 9. And don't give me the Apocrypha. Don't give me no 2nd Ezra. I was watching the Elder Paul Starr's video. These women out of their goddamn mind. 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. For Esau is the end. Matter of fact, I started 8. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto I. No, I'm sorry. 7. Then answered I and said, this is Ezra asking Uriel, about the end. How are we going to know when the end is here? What shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Right? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. When you look at this word world, it's the word age. All right. And the brother had put up, I think it was yesterday, he put up this scripture in the GNT. And it says that Esau is the end of the age and Jacob is the beginning of the age that follows, or something like that. So this is talking about an age is a uninterrupted rule. So the uninterrupted rule of the heathens will come to an end when Yahushua comes back. And we're witnessing the falling apart at the seams of this final empire. All right, so back in Luke 20, well, we read that already. So let's go back to here. So a hidden purpose or counsel, this is for the word mystery, secret will of men of the Most High, secret counsels, which govern the Most High in dealing with the righteous, which are hidden from ungodly and wicked men, but plain to the godly, right? As they are, let me see, as they are plain, as they are plain. Okay. Let's type in, they are plain. Okay. Let's type in are plain. Sirach 39:24. As his ways are plain unto the holy, so are they stumbling blocks unto the wicked. And that's why things are written in mysteries, okay, in parables, in riddles, so that everyone can't get it. Because the Lord doesn't want everybody to get it. Only the elect. It's all about the elect. In rabbinic writings, it denotes the mystic or hidden sense of an Old Testament saying, of an image or form seen in a vision, of a dream. So there's a mystery here, right? Let's read it again. And upon her forehead was a name written, mystery. And what is the mystery? Who Babylon the greatest conglomeration of confusion, has all of these different religious, well, the religious part really more so goes into the mother of harlots, but this is more so like the amalgamation or the bringing together of all of the military strategies and governmental legislation, so on and so forth, that was put together, to make this hybrid empire called America. You had something called the Hammurabi Code. Let's see. Let's go back to all. Hammurabi, if I spelled that right, Code of Hammurabi. Damn, got it right. The Code of Hammurabi is a Babylonian legal text composed during 1755 to 1750 BC. It is the longest, best organized, and best preserved legal text from the ancient Near East. It is written in the old Babylonian dialect of Akkadian, purportedly by Hammurabi, sixth king of the first dynasty of Babylon. That goes back to when when the actual Babylonians, the Cushites, were ruling ancient Babylon. Let's see. Okay, we read that. Okay, so I don't have anything else here. So let me just grab that real quick. I just wanted to see, because I believe, you want to know what I believe? I believe that America was also influenced by that. I mean, I could be wrong, but I kind of remember that being so. No, okay, America was not directly influenced by Hammurabi's code, but rather influenced by the indirect long-term historical development of legal principles that Hammurabi's code was a part of and contributed to. So yeah, so they did. So you can't, okay, not directly, but all of, you have different, I wish I could think of some examples, but you have different examples in law that goes back to the Hammurabi Code, which all of these different empires use parts of that. So such as the concept of justice, the establishment of a societal order, and the idea of proportional punishment. The code served as an early example of codifying laws that evolved and influenced later civilizations and legal systems, including those that shaped American law through other sources like Roman and English law. Yeah, so yes, America was influenced by the Hammurabi Code. Doesn't matter if it was indirectly or not directly or indirectly, they were still influenced by it. So the answer should have just been yes. All right. So going back to Revelation. So mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, which is, that's dealing with all your religions, Satanism, freedom of religion, Satanism, witchcraft, atheism, so on and so forth, and abominations of the earth. That's the alphabet people lifestyle. And this all is, these are all attributes of America. And when you go to the Hebrew of this, these different phrases, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots, abominations of the earth, because I believe in this one, you have to take off the Babylon the Great adds up to 6. I believe you take off the mother of harlots adds up to 6. You take out the and, abominations of earth, I think it is, also adds up to 6 in the Hebrew. High Priest Ariad did that years ago, broke that down. The Spirit had Elder Pastor mention it, and the Spirit had me do a lesson on it years ago. That's still, if you type that in, Revelation 17 and 5 to 666 or something like that, I can't remember exactly how it's worded. It should pop up because I believe other brothers more than likely either uploaded it. Well, they uploaded it, but I believe it might still be on. I think I did upload it, if I'm not mistaken, to GMS Info Doc Channel 12. All right. So this is showing you why America is called Babylon the Great, because of all these different influences. The prefix abami is derived from the abominari, which means to detest or to abhor, right? Meaning to avoid. These are things to avoid. It is used in words like abomination, indicating something that is greatly I guess it's be disliked and really greatly to be avoided. Right. The brother put Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And this encapsulates that too, because it goes into it. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Okay. This encapsulates the 666. This is what it's all about. And the 666 system, also encompasses the which is the beast system, encompasses the microchip, which is the MOTB. All right, so let's go back to the chat. It says the Roman Empire influence on republicanism and law, right? Because when we go to First Maccabees, chapter 8. This is speaking about the Roman Empire, but this goes back pretty much to, we believe it goes back to the Japhites that Jake was cool with, and eventually Esau took them down, right? And when I say Japhites, I'm talking about the brown-skinned Japhites, not them demons that call themselves, Greeks and Romans today. Although some of them are Jakes, some of them, are leftover Japhites, but the majority of them are a lot of them are Edomites. Okay, I'm just gonna go straight to the point. Okay, this is speaking about the Romans. Also, that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted, right? Because it was a time of the Roman Empire. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple to be magnified thereby, right? Because the prophecy stated that this particular empire would be different or diverse from the other ones in the way that it was ruled, because all empires that were ever ruled by monarchy. You had a king, and the king had, a prince or princess, which were his sons that would after his death, take over the crown, and that's how it was ruled. But the Roman Empire was not ruled in that fashion. They made it their mission to have the Roman Empire ruled differently than all of those other empires. That's why when Bill Clinton, he tried to make himself dictator. Yeah, if y'all understand what I'm saying, Julius Caesar, he pretty much was assassinated because he tried to set himself up in the dictatorial, kingly type of status, and they wasn't having it. So they smoked him. Just bear with me 1 second, brothers, a few sisters, Babakashah, Salakia. Oh. So that's why they took him out, because he wanted to be a dictator, and they were not going for that, dictatorial king, monarch rulership, So it says, verse 15. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a Senate house. This is going back to the Roman Empire. Does not America have a Senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily? Today's, I think it's 300 and something, or I'm not sure the amount of senators. I think it might be something similar, or it might be a little different, but nevertheless, it's still the same concept. Consulting always for the people. Is that not what the so-called council, the so-called senators do? Are they not supposed to be legislating for the people? People bring complaints to them, and then they'll sit down and write bills, to help supposedly help the populace. It says, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end they might be well ordered. And they committed their government to one man every year. In this case, today is every 4 years. You have a president. Back then, they were known as Caesars, named after Julius Caesar, who ruled over all their country. Yep, over all the provinces of the empire, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. All right, and we know that eventually that changed when they tried to become dictators, and a lot of those emperors, when they sat on the throne, when they sat in that position, they were nervous, they were stressed out, because they were always worried about being assassinated. So let's go back. Republicanism in law. The founding fathers looked to Rome as a model of a republic, not a monarchy. So America followed in the same footsteps as the ancient Roman Empire, which in the book of Daniel 7, right, and 6, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. The leopard was the third beast, is the Greek Empire. The leopard represents Alexander the Creep, or the Greek, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. That goes into the history. The beast also, which is his 4 generals. The beast had also 4 heads, right? Because out of his empire came up 4, and dominion was given to it, meaning it was taken from Alexander because he got sick and died, and it was passed on to his generals. It says, after this I saw in a night vision, and behold, a 4th beast. This is dealing with the Roman Empire. Now, I'm not sure if it was this chapter or chapter 2. I think it's chapter 2 that breaks down the different empires. It actually puts it in bold letters, each empire, if I'm not mistaken. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible. This is the Roman Empire, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. The great iron teeth represents the military might. And it devoured and brake in pieces, meaning it absorbed and absolved all them different nations into them, and they had to become tributary, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. Yeah, because he made them, bow to the Roman Empire. It says, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. Why? Because the way it was ruled and governed. And it had 10 horns, which this was the ancient names of the 10 horns, which this would play a pivotal, important part in the latter prophecy with America and the EU and NATO, or technically the EU. And NATO also plays a big part. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. And what was that little horn? That's America. Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Once again, going into history, the 3 empires, or the 3 empires that ruled America before America kicked, pretty much got rid of them. I'm just merely, just to get through this. We have videos that go in depth into this history. And behold, in his horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. That's America. All right. So let's go back here. Where did we leave off at? Republicanism and law. The founding fathers looked to Rome as a model of a republic, not a monarchy. And that's why I said it was diverse from the others. Civic virtue. Roman ideals about citizenship and public duty were admired. Yeah, because you had something called the SPQR, I believe it is. Or was the Senate and the populace or something like that? SPQR is SPQR is a Latin acronym for Senatus Populasque Romanus, the Senate of the populace of Rome, which means the Senate and people of Rome. All right, it was a central symbol of the Roman Republic and Empire, appearing on documents, public works, and legionary standards to represent the unity and authority of the Roman state. Today, the abbreviation is still widely used by the municipality of Rome and its famous element in Roman history and modern popular culture, right? And it's also used in America, but just not under that name. So architecture and symbolism, U.S. government buildings. See, listen good. U.S. government buildings, not your average homes, not just businesses, not any, unless it's a business that's trying to mimic, like Greece or Rome or whatever the case may be. U.S. government buildings reflect Roman style columns, domes, Latin models. Because if you type that in, right, let's go to American government buildings, right? And then let's go to images. What do you see? Looks like you're in Rome. I remember years ago, Apostle Tahar was speaking out there in Wall Street. That's when he was a very young man. And he said it feels like we're in Rome, because when you go down in those areas, you see a lot of those governmental buildings that are in the fashion of the ancient Roman Empire. Now check this out. Roman government buildings. And this is why America is known, or when you read about the image of the beast, that's what it's talking about. The image of the beast is everything that the ancient Roman Empire did, America mimics. From their republic, to their government, the way they run their legislation, so on and so forth. And these are Roman governmental buildings, as you can see, stylized. This is what America stylized itself after. Okay. So it says, examples: the Senate, the Capitol, the eagle as a national symbol. Was not the eagle the national symbol of ancient Rome? These all have Roman roots, because the Romans were known for carrying the eagles. The Greeks were known for carrying the eagles. This is Esau's symbol. This is one of their main symbols. And this is why the Lord dropped little clues in the scriptures, but they're still written in mysteries. No, they ain't talking about that ox. They're talking about the ostrich ox. Select Obadiah 1:4. Though thou exalt thyself as what? As the eagle. This is the symbol of America, the eagle. Now, when you go back and you research that, right? This guy, Benjamin Franklin, wanted to make the turkey the domestic animal, or the model, or the animalistic, representation of America. And they was like, no, man, we ain't going for that turkey. They wanted the eagle. Eagle is the most proudest, the highest flying bird out there. And it fits these devils. So it says, though thou exalt thyself as an eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai. This is going into their, space missions. They never went to the moon, even though they said they did. Because 1969 was a long time ago, Tony. And if they would have went up to the moon, back in 69, you best better believe there would have been some McDonald's, some debris and trash floating all over the place up there. It would have been polluted. There would have been, missions going back and forth, people living up there, working up there. All right. So let's go back. The British Empire, influence on legal and political systems, common law, trial by jury, parliamentary principles, right? And I'm sure if you do the research on the British Empire, they got a lot of their influence from the Roman Empire also. Language and culture, English, Protestant work ethic, individual rights. Colonial legacy, the U.S. emerged from British colonialism, inheriting both its structure and its global ambition, right? And that's why in Jeremiah, I believe that's 50 and 12 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Wow, Brakateo Bashimal shot, man. Jeremiah 50, I started 11. Because ye were glad, because you rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage. This is the Most High cursing you devils out, you Edomites, Babylon the Great, because you are grown fat as a heifer at grass and bellow as bulls. Right, that's from all of your treachery, from all of your fraud, from all of your thefts. That's what the Lord said. How, ye rich men, for your miseries that shall come upon you. You know, it says, your mother, who is America's mother? That's Great Britain. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Yeah, because they look at America with total disdain. Those other so-called European countries look at America with total disdain. Like America is like the lowest of the low. It's like you have relatives, you know, and your relatives for the most part are well behaved, well mannered. You know, they did something with their life, but you always have that one individual that's uncouth. You know, that's that's a drug addict. You know, drug dealing. Yeah, we want him out of there. Noriega, the drug addict, the drug dealing. Inside joke. You know, you always have that. So that's how all these so-called European nations look at America. They're all related, but America is like the F up of the crew. So that's why, England says that they're going to be confounded. And that's why in Daniel 7, it speaks about, that America's look was more stout than its fellows. And that's causing a lot of friction. You had something called the National Lampoon. I believe it was a movie. It's a movie, but I believe that's what it was called, National Lampoon. And I believe they had one called National Lampoon European Vacation or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. National Lampoon. European Vacation. That's it. And in this movie, they show you the disdain that these so-called Europeans have for America. And how they look down on America. America is like low class to them. They like Popeye. PP is low class. Belong in la onda. Inside joke. So, example, the U.S. Constitution was shaped partly in response to British governance, but also drew heavily from British legal traditions, right? And they also did from the Roman Empire. The Spanish Empire influence on territorial expansion. U.S. gained Florida, the Southwest, and California from Spain/Mexico. Catholic missions and settlements laid cultural foundations in the West and Southwest. Legal concepts, Spanish land grants, and property law influenced Western U.S. development. Right. You had what was that called? Not the Concordat. This devil, Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI. Papal bulls. The papal bulls. What are papal bulls? Oh, there you go. A papal bull is a formal authoritative decree issued by the Pope, named after the circular land sea bulla attached to it. These documents have historically communicated significant decisions, doctrines, appointments, and excommunication, serving both religious and political purposes by affirming the church's authority and influencing secular affairs. We're joined by the elder Khanaka. Bulls were used to grant indulgences, call for crusades, establish universities, and define matters of faith, making them crucial tools for shaping church policy and world history. And pretty much the papal bull that Rodrigo Borgia, Rodrigo Borgia papal bull, that gave the British crown, that gave the Spanish crown the authority to conquer all lands that were found by Cristobal Colon. That devil. Rodrigo Borgia's most famous paper bull series issued in 1493, which was a year later. Well, not even a year later. It was like right into, because October 1492 is when that devil Columbus so-called discovered America, and then he went back. So right after that, when they got the news, the very first thing they did was take 500 Taino slaves over there, and what Rodrigo Borgia did was he wrote a paper bull saying that the lands that they found belonged to the crown of Spain. And this is what Esau does. He just claims shit. Matter of fact, Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. You gonna get that? And you got it. You could break it down too.
Habakkuk 2 and 5. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, and that wine is his philosophy. Mm-hmm. His wine is his doctrine. His wine is what he feeds the people. He puts spells on the people and enchantments on the people, making them think that they're free, changing history, making them think that they have liberty to do certain things. Mm-hmm. Use the Bible, but pervert the Bible, the understanding of the Bible. So now the people, their mind is all messed up, which is symbolic of that wine. Mm-hmm. Which wine is used to what? To let your guard down. To relax, let your guard down, to be merry and mirth, right? Mm-hmm. Neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. All right, because he takes until there's nothing more, and then he'll still try to take. This damn devil has a plan to actually capture your spirit and put it on a hard drive, so he can keep it forever. So if he wants to put you in prison, he's okay. 1,000 years in prison, he got you. He got you in a hard drive somewhere. Okay, but gather unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And this is why you have the melting pot of Babylon the Great. He allows all these nations to come over here and to do what? To pervert their minds. That's his whole goal, to pervert their mind and to destroy you. But he doesn't sit there and kill you with the sword. Mm-hmm. He gives you that mingled wine, which destroys you, which you pass that philosophy down to your children. This is why our people, they still have sweet Jesus in their mind, because that's been passed down transgenerational. Okay, you want me to continue?
Yeah, you could break down. Use your discretion.
Okay. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that layeth himself with thick clay. And now we're basically seeing the blowback to all, his revising of history, his changing of the nation's names, the lands, the destruction of images, iconoclasm, his Renaissance. All those things are being turned upside down, or right side up, really, actually again. And all the truth is coming out. And now people are saying, basically, destruction to Esau, because the things that you got it through violence. You didn't get it through diplomatic and right. Being your brother, being a neighbor, how you try to, portray yourself to right. be this benevolent individual, one with God.
Negotiations
and trade agreements, and everything is fair. When your whole history proves that you're unfair, and you're still. That's the spirit. It just came home
144, bro. Yeah,
it proved that you're unfair, and you continue to give the short end of the deal.
Oh yeah.
On the other nations, the other nations still get the short end of the deal,
right?
Even though you try to talk like you are diplomatic,
right? You're giving them the impression that they're getting the same deal you're getting, but they're not.
And that's part of his wine. That's part of his philosophy, because he makes you believe, you you get a girl, I love you, and you don't love it, you don't leave her, but she's telling you, or vice versa, the woman too,
right?
More so, you can really say it's a woman, because that philosophy is like unto a woman. So a woman's telling me that I love you, baby, I'll never leave you. She'll even give you a nice little massage.
You're my only one.
The only one, but she want to creep up in that bank account. She want to get that password. You know, she wanna suck you dry of everything, and then she gonna leave your ass. And then you stuck with you like, damn, I thought you know, and then she'll come back saying, no, I'm sorry, baby. You know, let's work it out again. I'm not gonna do that again. And then she takes more and more from me, you know, and that's basically the so-called white man. That's what he's done.
First of all, the white man's words are lies.
That's it.
You know, that's Ricardo Montalban in this movie. He played a Gadite, and that's pretty much the truth.
Like the elder said, the elder. Pashai, the elder Pashai said, the wine creeps up on you.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and it does.
Because, you know, it's like it tastes good. You know, you just sitting, and then before you know, you passed out.
And Esau give you that mingled wine, which is he'll give you a concoction of different, in this case, poisons.
Yeah, cesspool.
You know, sedatives and things that are euphoric, like drugs. Right.
Right.
You take drugs, you get that euphoric feeling. It feels great. You feel like, damn, I feel like the best. Mm-hmm. But then ultimately the drug wears off. Right. And then you need more. Right. And you need more, And meanwhile, while you're out of your mind, if your body's being destroyed, your mind is degraded. You know? Yeah, that's pretty much.
All right, so I'm gonna go here. This is I put in Rodrigo Borgia's Papal Bull, right? So Rodrigo Borgia's most famous Papal Bull series, issued in 1493, addressed the division of the New World between Spain and Portugal following Christopher Columbus' voyages. Key among these bulls were Inter Caetera and Exame Devotionis, which granted Spain rights to newly discovered lands and established a demarcation line to future exploration, meaning they stake their claims. So whatever is discovered belongs to them, right? Though the line was later adjusted to the Treaty of Tordesillas due to Portuguese concerns. Now, what I did was I typed in, was the doctrine of discovery influenced by the Papal Bulls, right? And it says, yes, the doctrine of discovery was directly influenced by and based on a series of 15th century Papal Bulls, which were public decrees from the Pope. These religious decrees provided justification for European Christians empires to claim ownership, control, and the resources of non-Christian lands to subjugate indigenous peoples. Notable bulls include Dum Diversas and Romanus Pontifex, 1452 and 1455, which authorized colonial powers to seize lands and people, and the Inter Caetera, 1493, which granted a monopoly on lands west of a certain line to Spain. This fusion of papal decrees with the legal concept of terra nullius, empty land, became a legal framework for colonization worldwide. Just because Gad wasn't living in all parts of the land doesn't mean that it wasn't their land. And the thing about it, Gad said they were willing to share. Look, there's plenty of land. You know, we can, you know, why you got to take ours? They just show you how demonic these devils are. But it was all prophecy. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Right? So let's type in. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is Psalms 94 and 20.
Let me get there real quick. All right. Go ahead.
Yep. Psalms 94 and 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? Yeah, and basically what you were just reading, his justification is that he writes it into his law. You know, he prescribes all this wickedness, and the justification, I can take you down, I can take this land is mine. All right, by putting it in his law and say, hey, look, this is the law. I'm walking it straight and narrow.
Right.
I can do this to you because I classified you as a savage. I can do this to you because this is actually my land.
These fucking devils got a nerve to call somebody a savage.
But that's all. That's a psychological thing that he does called projection. He basically says what he is, but he puts it on you.
Damn.
So he's the actual savage. His ways are actually savage ways, savagery, but he has to justify him doing something to you by calling you a savage.
Right.
And you can't If you drop a penny on the ground, I say, look, you see, look what you're doing.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's doing all type of madness, graping. That's what he did. But he controls the media. He controls the narrative.
Right.
And if you're able to control the narrative, you can control people's minds. But now, through the word coming out and the invention of the internet, he's not able to fully take control of the narrative. More people's minds are starting to hear the truth.
Mm-hmm. Read that in the NLT.
Okay, yeah. NLT. Can unjust leaders claim that the Most High is on their side? Leaders whose decrees permit injustice?
Woo!
Mm-hmm.
Let me read the NIV.
God. It says, can a corrupt throne be allied with you? A throne that brings on misery by its decrees.
Doctrine of discovery, the paper bulls, so on and so forth. And this has been Esau's track record. We know your track record, okay? Inside joke. So this is something that this devil ain't gonna change. He ain't gonna change. That's the true definition of insanity: doing something over and over and over again and expecting a different result, a different outcome. You F with the devil, you F with the snake, you won't get bit every time.
Every time. And the thing is, he's been doing this for so long that the nations are starting to be hip to it.
Yep.
And really, the nations wanted to take this damn devil down, but he had power over them.
Right.
They would come up. There are certain rebellions, even though the Iranians rebelled.
Right.
Is that in the 40s, I believe? The 40s or the 50s, they rebelled.
With Ayatollah Khomeini.
Yep. You had a lot of rebellions, but he was able to suppress them. Okay, but now the scriptures say, "Let the weak say I'm strong." So they're not going directly at Esau right now, but you can see behind the scenes they're breaking away from Esau economically. Okay, they're getting alliances in with other nations, and then ultimately, when it's time is come, they're gonna suddenly come upon Babylon the Great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it tells you those that were. Can I get it real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Obadiah.
That were Confederate.
Yep. Obadiah. Yep. Because they're behind the scenes, they're ready to take your ass out, Esau. All the nations are ready to take you out. We just read Habakkuk, how long to them that laid himself with thick clay.
The world can't afford you no more, E.
And they're starting to see that they don't need you.
No.
They have the technology. They have the same technology as you, and then in some cases, it's better.
Yeah, and their economy is built up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you basically built them up. You built up your enemies that will have a hand in taking you down, but ultimately, it's really the Heavenly Father that's taking you down.
That's it.
He's just using these other nations as pawns. Okay, Obadiah verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, which you're in alliance with these other nations, but they really don't want to be in alliance with you, but you give them goodies. That's part of your wine.
Yeah.
You beat them, but then you give them a kiss.
You beat them and mistreat them.
You beat them and mistreat them, and then you treat them. You'll give them what's going to go into the bread.
Right.
You give them the aid. Right. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. Just like those Ammonites, the Koreans and them Japanese, they do deals with you, but there's rumblings of they want you out of their land because you have bases in Japan and in Korea. They actually want you out of that land, but when the time comes, are they gonna shoot missiles on you? Okay, you can only take so much. You can only back somebody into a corner. It could be the weakest person. They can only swing. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. These Arab nations, these Gulf nation states, like Bahrain, Qatar, okay, even Saudi Arabia, okay, all the Arab nations that Arab Emirates that are at peace with you. The scriptures tell you how they're gonna be as the wild boar. Okay, they're gonna be raging. They're gonna remember their state. All right, Elam wants to destroy you. India, Pakistan, they have nuclear missiles. Okay, and then the history is starting to resurface. Like when you were playing the documentary earlier about Jake and in the Byzantine Empire and even before that the Moorish Empire, Constantinople, and how it was all these Jakes that actually ruled ruled those areas, ruled Europe.
Yep.
So all that history is coming up, and the forgotten history of what you did to the other nations. Okay. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is no understanding in him. Shall I not in that day, said the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and the understanding out of the mount of Esau? Okay, because you're not going to be able to talk your way out of it. No, none of the nations are going to want. Well, it tells you in what's that, Isaiah, the 13th chapter, how the Medes will not regard silver or gold.
Yep.
So they're not going. They don't want your silver or gold. They don't want your money.
Right.
Okay. They don't want your apology. Okay. They don't want another trade deal. Okay. They don't want no agreement, because your track record is you break every single agreement.
Yeah. And the scriptures say that the evil thoughts shall come into the heart, of the king of Gog, pretty much of Gog, which is the Russians. So they're not going to regard anything that you have anymore, because they don't need you. They don't need your money. This is why they're looking for, other ways, to do business. Shanghai Corporation. I don't know if they're still around.
The BRICS. Oh, there's another Arab conglomeration where they're trying to do it's likened unto like an Arab NATO, where those Arab nations that were actually, in conflict with each other, because you got a lot of them Arab tribes. They're real tribal and they don't really come together. You got the Shiites
and the Sunnis.
They fight against each other, but through you beating these other nations down, other Arab nations down, they're like, shit, we need to stop fighting against each other. And we need to come together and we can fight later, but we gotta get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
And then we can fight when we won't have power. But the thing is, none of you gonna have power. You all gonna get taken down. Okay.
That's it. So I'm gonna go back to the chat. All right. So this is bullet point number 4. It says the Ottoman and Islamic empires, and these are just pretty much influences that America used, but there was many others. Indirect influence, though not direct, America's awareness of these empires informed its early foreign policy. Concepts like religious pluralism and tolerance as practiced in parts of the Ottoman Empire were studied by Enlightenment thinkers who influenced U.S. ideals. Number 5, the Chinese Empire and later Japan influences on trade and foreign policy. The U.S. was involved in the opening of China and Japan. Example given the Opium War context, Commodore Perry in Japan. Orientalism shaped American views on Asia, which influenced immigration policy and Pacific expansion. Number 6, indigenous empires, Iroquois, Confederacy, Aztec, Inca, influence on governance ideas. So, you get it, the French Empire. All right. Then you get the summary. So the summary of tables is the empire that influenced America, right? The Romans and their influence was republicanism, law, symbols. British, law, language, colonial legacy. Spanish, land, missions, legal traditions. French, political philosophy, territory. Iroquois, governance, model, federalism. Ottoman/Islamic, indirect religious and pluralistic ideas. Chinese/Japan, foreign policy and trade relations. So America is this hybrid nation, and it was influenced by all of these different empires. That's why it's known as Babylon the Great. Final thought, America is both a product of empire and a student of empire. Its founders studied past empires for lessons in governance, expansion, and collapse, trying to emulate the strengths and avoid the downfalls. Ironically, in doing so, the U.S. built an empire of its own, one that reflects many of the empires that came before it, just reimagined in a modern hybrid form. Right, so let's go real quick to Revelation 13, and we'll pretty much close it out there, unless you have something else. Matter of fact, you know what? We'll go to Revelation 13 and then hit another precept. Revelation 13 and 11.
Revelation 13 and 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Right,
this is America coming up as a revived ancient Roman Empire. The 2 horns like a lamb, 2-party system, spake as a dragon, their legislation, draconian legislation. Go ahead.
Yep. It says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him.
And who was the first beast before him? That was the Roman Empire. Go ahead.
It says, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed.
Right, and that's why you see so many influences from the Roman Empire here in America. So when America was established upon these principles, going back to the Renaissance period, you know, from these different other so-called European countries, right? It was set up and established to where you see it right now, to bring about the destruction and devastation of this place, to, you know, show the world what it is to be wicked. This is going to be left as a burnt monument. Scriptures say in Jeremiah it should be a burnt mountain. Let's go to Revelation 17 and 9. Yeah, take your.
Yeah, take a little water.
We're gonna go to Revelation 17 and 9, and this pretty much breaks down what these seven had. The whole book of Revelation, different parts speak about this. The dragon, great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns. This breaks it down what that represents.
Yeah, this is Revelation 17 and 9, and here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth.
Right, the mountains is a representation of governments. These are these ancient European governments, which pretty much stem back to the time of the Roman Empire. Before the Roman Empire, during the Greeks, the 7 major heads, which are the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, Germanic Major, Germanic Minor, and Britain. This is the 7 that influenced America. Go ahead.
It says, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen.
Right, because by the time that the Apostle John saw this vision, 5 of those empires were in subjection to the Roman Empire. That was the Greeks, the Spanish, the French, Germanic Major, and Germanic Minor. Go ahead.
Yep. And one is.
That's the British Empire, which had not yet come. Go ahead. I'm sorry, the one that's the Roman Empire.
And the other is not yet come.
Right, the other that's not yet come, that's Britain.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And when he cometh, he must continue a short space.
Right, and that's why in 1944 the British Empire lost the world reserve currency status. And you know, going back to the 1700s, America allegedly broke away from them and got its independence. Go ahead.
And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th.
This is America. The beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. Go ahead.
And is of the 7.
Because it comes from all 7. Go ahead.
And goeth into perdition.
And goeth into perdition, meaning goes into destruction. That's the main point. You know, that's you know, they're going into destruction, into perdition. Matter of fact, go ahead.
Yep. It says
verse 12.
Verse 12. Yep. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast.
Right. This represents the EU. Go ahead.
These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast.
Right. So they're gonna have they're gonna have one mind because they're coming into that new world order, and they're gonna give their power and strength to the beast, meaning the 10 horns. Go ahead.
These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful.
Right. So they're gonna make war against the Lord, all these different armies, and they're gonna be eviscerated. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, okay. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Go ahead.
And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore.
Right, because of America, the policies, the unjust ways that America treats these allies that are supposed to be, getting the benefits that America is getting, but they're getting the short end of the stick. Go ahead.
And shall make war, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
Right, and this is, the nuclear missiles. Go ahead.
For the Most High has put in their hearts to fulfill His will.
And that's the point.
Yep.
You know, go ahead.
And to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the word of the Most High shall be fulfilled.
Right, because everything is predicated upon prophecy. Go ahead.
And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
And if you can't see that that's America, we don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. What's up with these Christians? Why can't they find who is this great city, this great kingdom? You know, they one thing they don't do is they don't go into prophecy.
That's it.
You know, they abhor prophecy because prophecy destroys the whole argument. Okay, and prophecy gives us, like the scripture said, we have a more sure word of prophecy. Okay, everything that is contained in the scriptures is actually coming to pass now, and America is fulfilled in that. And you literally can't deny it. You know. So. Yeah,
you got anything else?
Nah, I didn't really have anything. Yeah.
All right. So with that, we pray that your brothers and a few sisters have been edified. Till the next time we say shalom.